Hey, be seated. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to speak on the motion by the Attorney General. But before I do so, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate and thank Honorable Mary Naulumatua for a wonderful statement this morning in Parliament. As they say, she took the words right out of my mouth, something that we've been saying all along. As much as I would like Pepe's other half, the NFP sitting here, members of the NFP sitting here, to take that on board, I doubt very much that that's going to happen. They've been walking around in a cul-de-sac all this time. Mr. Speaker, my government has implemented legislative reforms and innovative strategies for the benefit of all Fijians. These new measures were undertaken with extensive consultations. Mr. Speaker, the government saw a need to reform archaic legislation that hindered socio-economic development and facilitate support measures for those affected. We provide opportunities for Fijians to not only own their own homes through our first home purchase program, but to also regularize informal tenants that reside on certain land. In this case, as you heard, state land. If my government was irresponsible, Mr. Speaker, we could have just allowed tenants to settle in informal settlements and to have an insecure future. But as everyone knows, Mr. Speaker, that is not my government. Mr. Speaker, we do things the right way by ensuring that Fijians not only have homes and formal leases, but can also access financial systems and proper services such as electricity, clean water, footpaths and roads. In essence, Mr. Speaker, this bill ensures a very important and fundamental right of every Fijian. According to Section 35 of the Constitution, government must take reasonable measures within its available resource to achieve the progressive realization of the right of every person to access an adequate housing and sanitation. This amendment, Mr. Speaker, will allow Fijians who are currently residing on state land and have obtained informal approval from the lawfully registered lessee to formalize these arrangements. Mr. Speaker, in many cases, the initial registered lessee cannot be located or simply does not have the capacity to be able to subdivide the land, which was sold without consent many years prior. Mr. Speaker, the Director of Lands, through this amendment to the State Lands Act, will have the proper authority to re-enter such land or cancel a lease for such purposes. However, there are certain guidelines, clear guidelines, on how to go about this before any decision can be made. That is, a committee headed by the Permanent Secretary for Housing and Community Development must first determine any contravention to the State Lands Act and then propose a course of action. These are proper checks and balances, Mr. Speaker, in place to ensure that there's no abuse of this authority and that each case is reviewed thoroughly before determining the best way forward for all parties involved. An important outcome of regularizing land is that occupants will have security of land tenure to be able to build permanent homes. Leaseholders will be mainstreamed into the financial system and will be able to use their land titles as collaterals when they approach financial institutions for bank loans and other services, including insurance to rebuild their properties in the event of a natural disaster. Mr. Speaker, we also want to ensure that properties are built to quality standard. Improper leasing creates a lot of uncertainty for occupants. This is reflected in the types of houses they build, which are more often than not unable to withstand the ferocity of natural disasters. The best approach for any disaster, Mr. Speaker, is to be prepared by building resilient infrastructure. A key strategy of my government is to develop and enforce building standards for home construction that requires improved resilience to cyclones and flooding, as outlined in the National Development Plan. The Fijian government is committed to growing our economy, supporting ordinary Fijians and improving their livelihoods, and for greater sustainability. Mr. Speaker, in summary, this amendment to the State Lands Act will assist many Fijians who have for years faced uncertainty in securing proper lease titles. They will be provided with the opportunity to safeguard their families' lives and their future generation. This reaffirms my government's commitment to leaving no one behind. Based on these remarks, Mr. Speaker, I do support the amendment to the State Lands Act. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Prime Minister for his contribution to the debate.